Welcome to the You Empowered podcast with your host, Justine Jetty. If you want to unlock your potential and step into the most authentic, healthiest, and happiest version of you, then you're in the right place. Each week, we'll dive into practical, evidence-based strategies for your habits, mindset, and health so you can create a life and a body you love. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the You Empowered podcast. Today, I'm joined by Meegan Care, a midlife mentor and psychosynthesis counsellor with over 25 years of experience helping women navigate the messy in-between seasons of life. Meegan specialises in supporting women through menopause, burnout, and those what the fuck moments that can leave us feeling disconnected from ourselves. In this conversation, we're going to be diving into the realities of midlife that don't often get spoken about, the challenges, the changes, and most importantly, the practical ways you can navigate them with more ease, self-trust, and compassion. Meegan, welcome to this podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me on, Justine.
Thank you so much for being here. So you've been a counsellor for over 25 years. What drew you to psychosynthesis in particular? For those that are listening that haven't heard of that term before, how does that differ from, I guess, traditional approaches in therapy?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's not a particularly well-known form of counselling and psychotherapy. So just tracking back, so I was in my 20s. I'm now 54, 55 this year. I was in my 20s and I really suffered with Crohn's disease for many years. And I did a lot of personal healing around that. And that's a really long story. But near sort of where I was starting to feel better within myself, maybe at 80%, I'd started to put on some weight and started to heal. And I had if anyone knows Crohn's disease, inflammatory bowel disease, it has a lot of really gnarly symptoms with it. And most of those were starting to come good. But every time something happened and I became stressed or something sort of got triggered within me, all of the symptoms of Crohn's would flare up again. And so that was when I sort of went looking for, well, what is the mind body, the somatic, the psychological trauma aspects of this for me? Yeah. And of course, with any illness and Crohn's disease is an immune disorder. For me and my experience, there were many layers of early life trauma that really weighed into what was going on with my body and my nervous system. It's not just that, but it was multi-layered. And so that's really what drew me to psychotherapy, to counselling, to trauma work. And, this is so I was 25, so this is like 30 years ago. Yeah. We hear a lot about somatics now, and trauma work wasn't so much in our popular culture then, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah, and so I did a lot of work, and, there's a lot of stories to tell around that. And then I started training in body work and kinesiology, and I found that really fascinating and really interesting. However, I started to work with clients, and I remember one particular client, and she showed up and she'd had very early life significant sexual abuse trauma. And I realized I wasn't equipped to deal with that in the way that I wanted to deal with that. And so I sort of went on a bit of a journey to find out, well, what was going to support me to support clients. And through my own illness and recovery, I'd had my own personal awakening. There's many layers to it. And so psychosynthesis in particular is very rooted in Western psychology, just the sort of psychotherapy that we would have when we go to talk therapy. So it's really rooted in that. Its depths are also in the Eastern height kind of psychology and philosophy as well. And so we might think of that as being like mindfulness practices and how that is filtered into therapies today.
Sure.
And so it's a combination of that depth and that height. And it didn't ignore the more than. It didn't ignore the spiritual. It didn't ignore the body. It took everything into account, including psychology, on a really deep level. So it wasn't like so woo-woo that it was bypassing, it had that deep structure and trauma training that I knew I needed for myself, but also to be able to help clients. And so it's been around for a long time. It's been around since the early 1900s, and it has stayed with me as being like the foundation of my practice from when I went through that very, very rigorous training way back then. Yeah.
That's really powerful. And I think what you just said there around your own journey with suffering with Crohn's disease and trying to find what works for you, I think, because there's something just more powerful about going through your own experience and then being able to connect that with clients too. Because as you say, there's many modalities of therapy. There's talk therapy. I've been to therapy before and I found talk therapy not as effective. How you explained it there makes a lot of sense. Like it's rooted in that deep structure, but it's holistic. It's taking the person into account. And so you're looking at all aspects of them, not just, sitting down on a couch chatting to someone, which I don't know about your experience with clients or what people have said to you, but in my experience, that kind of turned me off therapy because I'm like, I don't want to just sit down and chat to someone about, like, I can just chat to a friend about that. Do you know what I mean?
So coffee for that.
Yeah. So that's really powerful. That's really, really powerful. And so you talk a lot about, I guess, like the messiness of midlife. What have you found within your own journey? Because you touched on, obviously, like you went through your own journey with Crohn's disease, and what led you specifically to kind of having that moment where you're like, this is what I want to help other women with, and have those things connect?
Yeah, of course, so much of how we show up in the world and whatever it is we do is drawn from our own experience. So, of course, my experience of menopause and going through Crohn's disease at such a young age certainly had its toll on my body. However, I have been well from Crohn's disease for a few decades now, which has been amazing. But I do think it had an impact on me when I came into my early 40s, late 30s, around that sort of perimenopausal time. And so I actually ended up going through menopause and moving into postmenopause. So having that, that year without your menstrual cycle, which is then deemed you're in postmenopause, really quite young. So I was around 41, 42.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm quite young.
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't, all the while I was going, so I had my second child when I was 37, and then I sort of went straight into perimenopause, but without realising it.
Right.
Yeah, so it was this whole kind of, what on earth is going on with me, my mood, my sleep, my energy. At the beginning, I could put it down to having a young baby, but it continued on, and so it was very, very confusing. My friends of my same age were not going through perimenopause. This is like 12, 13, 14 years ago. We didn't have this really helpful conversation happening in the mainstream around perimenopause. So it was really such a mystery, and then a real challenge when I did I feel lucky that I've had a really amazing integrative doctor for many years. And so she sort of said to me, I hadn't been for ages, and I went for some tests and all that kind of thing. And she said, look, I think you're actually postmenopausal. This is what everything's showing. Wow. And I hadn't had a period for over a year, blah, 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 all of that kind of stuff. And so I think I was maybe 41, 42. And I was like, what the actual fuck? It was so shocking. And I reached
Sounds like a very rude awakening. Like,
a very rude
not
awakening.
only have you just had a child, but then you're like, what is all this shit that I'm dealing with? What's going on?
What the hell? I reached out to a friend who's a naturopath, and she's a bit younger than me. And I said, hey, this is happening. What's going on? She said, oh, well, sounds like you're in your Crohn years. And I was just like, no, that can't be right. Is it all over for me? It's all downhill from here, and it was such a time for me of really resisting what was happening and trying to find ways to kind of not be in that stage of life. And, it's a very tangled kind of story, but without the support. So a lot of it was by myself. And then obviously eventually coming to a place of acceptance. And so I've done all the stuff, right? I've done all the natural therapies. I've done all the work. And now I'm, for the last maybe 3 years, I've been taking bioidentical HRT or MHT, whatever we call it now.
Yeah.
So I've gone through the whole gamut of it. And I really struggled in my work and my career and my business and raising children. I had teenagers going through their own really difficult time, one of them. My business was really busy, which is I'd worked so hard to get it to that place.
Yeah.
It was finally in that place, and I didn't have the energy to work with it, to deal with it. I would go home at the end of the day. I was so tired. I wasn't sleeping that well. And remembering too, I was really good at looking after my health. I had a very strong meditation practice. So I knew how to take care of myself. I wasn't like burning the candle at both ends. And yet I still wasn't coping that well.
Yeah.
And so, as you said, a bloody rude awakening. It really was. And so that was my messy menopause, right?
Yeah.
And so that when I sort of started to see the sunlight again and the horizon and come out of that, I really felt in my heart, and I could see my friends starting to go through it. I could see clients starting to go through it. And I really feel so passionately about raising awareness about this. I'm not a nutritionist or a naturopath, so I really work in the mental health, mental well-being, psychological empowerment kind of space. And I know there's so much more on the other side of this. And so that's what really drives me to help women.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think what you've said there is really key. And I hope someone listening to this will feel comforted in what you've just said. Like the fact that you were someone who, having already struggled with Crohn's disease and started to educate yourself around that and how to look after yourself through that process, and already had an incredible practice in place with meditation and how to look after yourself from a mental perspective and doing all the things, what most women would consider doing all the things, yet you still had that rude shock and rude awakening. And I hear so many stories similar to yours, Meegan, of women who've gone through that shift around perimenopause, whatever age. I mean, yours was even younger, as you said, you just had a child. So that's, again, another layer to it, which makes it even more like complex and going through that and navigating that. But I've heard so many stories of women, going through peri, whatever age and stage, and it does leave them in the dark, and there isn't enough education or awareness or understanding around it, even with women who, for all intents and purposes, are looking after themselves. I work more obviously on the nutrition, fitness side of it. And I am trauma informed as well, but like my specialty is obviously the physical transformation, the kind of nutrition fitness side. And even that, like seeing women who've been in the gym, or not even in the gym, but like training a lot and doing all the things and still are faced with that real struggle. Something I hear a lot from so many women in perimenopause and postmenopause is, I'm curious to know your perspective on this, is you get taught the physical symptoms like maybe brain fog or mood swings or, change in your cycle, whatever that is. But a lot of people don't talk enough about the emotional well-being and the mental health side. So a lot of women are left in the dark where, okay, like I can tick these boxes from a physical side of it, but just aren't even aware or have no idea how to piece together what's going on internally for them, because no one's talking about it. And they just think, am I going crazy? What's going on right now with me?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's massive, isn't it? Because we can sort of pin down the physical symptoms, and we can quantify those and really understand that. But when it comes to the psychological and mental stuff that's going on, often what I hear from women is, maybe this is just me getting older. I'm really worried that I've got early signs of dementia. I'm going through burnout. I feel like I'm going fucking crazy. I don't know who I am anymore. So it goes from the very subtle, it's not subtle, but the harder to sort of measure, I don't know who I am anymore, I feel incredibly lost, to I go from 0 to 100 with rage, and this has never happened to me before, and I don't know what's going on. So all of that can be, and often is, not for everybody, but for a lot of us, is a part of perimenopause and early postmenopause. And so, and very often what we find is that we go to our doctor, and women can be prescribed antidepressants, anti-anxiety, right? I'm not against medication in any way, but we need to take into account the context of, well, if this woman is in perimenopause or early post or postmenopause, we need to look at the hormonal environment that might be contributing to this, to these challenges, to these symptoms.
Absolutely.
It is very difficult, and and I've talked to women who have had grandmothers and mothers who have had absolute, complete psychological, mental breakdowns. And when we start talking about what age was that, do you think that might have been around menopause time, and the awareness that comes from that, of women that have been committed to psychiatric institutions, we're talking 50, 70, 40 years ago, because it wasn't understood what was going on for them hormonally. And so, it's a very challenging time. It's not that well understood. There are some good resources on it now that bring understanding to the fact that, your hormones are changing. Estrogen is dropping and going up and down. Progesterone's dropping, all of that kind of stuff. And so what happens is that your brain goes through a significant shift, like a rewiring. And that can feel very destabilizing. It is very destabilizing. Some people call it the second puberty. It's that really wobbly, chaotic time, and that can feel like it's over. It's doom and gloom. It's all downhill from here. I'm putting on weight, my boobs are sagging, my face is sagging, I've got more wrinkles, I've got grey hairs, what the hell, my libido's dried up, I never want to have sex again, all of that, it's all over. But the message I have for women is, this is a time, it's a process we're going through. Let's get the support you need, because out the other side is the opportunity for a really incredibly empowered version of you, because your brain's going through a change and it can actually go through a massive upgrade.
I love that. And it's so important. It's so important to share with women that it's not the end, it's a new beginning, and it is a process, as you say. And it's just being equipped with the right support and the right tools to navigate that, and how important that is. I believe, like what you said there about the second puberty, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you've heard this, but I've heard that estrogen peaks higher in perimenopause than it does in puberty. And a lot of people don't realize that. And so, when you think about it, like, we're all equipped with puberty, we know that process, we kind of laugh and joke about it, and we're equipped with that. But it's still mind-boggling to me how little, considering every woman in the history of humankind has gone through menopause, some even, as you say, earlier than others, and some through medical menopause and things like that. It's mind-blowing to me, the lack of support and research. And as you say, now we're in a better place now, but it's still, I feel we're still behind. This is stuff we should have had access to, many, many years ago. Wow, that's amazing. So I guess for a woman listening to this right now, because I don't know about you, but I know in my own experience, and I'm yet to be perimenopausal, but I've certainly had my hurdles around hormones and body stuff and health. But women who maybe struggle to advocate for themselves, who are used to kind of putting themselves on the back burner or not really prioritizing themselves. And maybe for them, it's just easy for them to think, oh, this is just this is just like a normal thing. Maybe I'm just tired. Maybe I'm just run down. Maybe I just need to give myself a break. How can a woman, I guess, tell the difference between normal midlife changes, if there are such a thing as normal midlife changes, and deeper signs that she actually needs to reach out and get support?
Yeah, so when I work with women on my course, I have a couple of sort of self-assessment questionnaires, and one runs through the physical symptoms and one runs through the psychological, mental health and well-being symptoms. And it amazes women every time when they are listing these things of from, mild, moderate to severe. And it's just a self-assessment tool, right?
Yeah.
And when they see the whole picture of, oh, heck, actually, I think I need some support with this. Because when you're moving through your day-to-day and you've got all of the, just life stuff, whether you have a family, career, whatever it is, you just solve one problem at a time.
Sure.
But when you step back and you take a broad view, and it can be like, well, how long have you had trouble with your sleep? Because we know, right, sleep is fundamental to our health and well-being.
Absolutely.
How long has anxiety been peaking for you, or low mood, irritability, low sex drive, all of that kind of thing? So I think the Australasian Menopause Society have a really great questionnaire on there. I think it mainly covers the more of the physical symptoms. There's a few sort of psychological things in there, but that is a good place to start for sure. It's not easy, and unless your health provider is well informed, it can be easily overlooked. And this is why I'm so hot on educating ourselves. We don't need to be like, experts at it, but to have more awareness. And it is easy to get drowned with all of the information out there. But if we have a good baseline of understanding, and this is why I talk about it so much, that our psychological and mental health is so much a part of this perimenopause, menopausal journey. And we need to view them side by side, the physical and the mental.
Absolutely. I would say they're both as equally important as each other,
and they both problematically. The thing is that because of how society's structured, we find it harder to talk about mental health, right? Because there's still stigma. There's still shame. And then you layer on top of that the stigma surrounding menopause and aging and all the rest of that, what it means to be a woman. And you've got this kind of intensity of being alone with all of our challenges. And this is why having these conversations, like we're having, are so important.
Absolutely. And I wonder as well, on the mental health side of things, if women maybe delay reaching out, because I know this is going to sound very obvious as soon as I say it, but if you have a cut on your leg or you've got like a physical problem, you're going to go and get that help, whether it's to a physiotherapist or a doctor or something. You're going to get that looked at because you can see it, it's visible, it's tangible, but it's the invisible things that are going on internally. I don't know if that's also a contributing factor where women kind of either delay or just kind of minimize or downplay it as well. I don't know if that's something you've noticed as well with.
Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely, that just happens across the board, and it happens in all parts of life as well, where we still have this idea that when we're struggling with our mental health, there's something wrong with us. We're not as strong or as resilient. There's a weakness there. Yeah. We don't think about that when we've broken our arm, right? Yeah. We don't think, well, unless it's something foolish, right?
Yeah, totally.
But when we injure ourselves or we hurt ourselves, there's much less of that layer of kind of shame and hiddenness around it. But for whatever reason, we've still got all of this stuff happening with mental health, where it is difficult for people to reach out through different stages of their life, and that absolutely shows up in that menopausal journey as well. And I just want to add to that something that's arising in me to speak to is the challenge women have in relationships. So I've been married. I've been with my partner for like 25 years. maybe a bit longer. And we definitely went through a really difficult time through that perimenopausal time. And you can feel like, I just don't want to be near this person anymore. They're very breathing, existing, and chewing. It's a thing. It's winding me up so much, I want to explode. This is also part of that menopausal journey. And for some women, the right choice is to move out of the relationship, to complete and go their separate ways. But for others of us, we go through this process in the relationship where it feels like it's falling away. It does feel like the relationship itself is kind of dying. But within all relationships, there is death and rebirth all the time, right? And so this is a piece of I guess solidarity for women if you're going through this challenge, that it can be worked through and the relationship can be revived. However, we have to look after what's going on for us inside of ourselves, because there's so much that happens that is hormonally driven, and we can adapt to it, right? We can get that support. We can, as soon as we understand something, it takes the intensity out of it and the blame out of it, and we can work together.
Totally. Yeah. So what would you suggest or say, speaking to that experience where a woman herself is still trying to figure out what's going on for her, and maybe she's at the early stages of that process, but her partner is also probably as equally in the dark? What do you think we need, both, I guess, on a society level, but also in terms of resources and what's available to try and educate, I guess, partners as well, so that, keeping in mind, I mean, I don't know that not all partners are supportive, but for the partners that obviously want to be supportive and want to be there, what do you feel would be those measures that we put in place to support both the woman who's going through it, but to also solidify and help, as you say, that death and rebirth stage of the relationship, so that they can kind of come together and have that support?
Yeah, for sure. And there's a couple of pieces to it. What was supportive, it didn't fix it, but what was supportive for my partner and myself was going through a short period of couples therapy with a really good couples therapist, right? Like you said, not just chatting on the couch, but really deep work. And it's hard. That is couples therapy is hard work, but it was really worthwhile. The other piece that women say is really helpful is they have their partner listen or watch something around menopause education, like listen to a podcast around what does menopause look like for you, for women, right? The fact that she doesn't want you to touch her at the moment or is not interested in sex may not just be about you or the relationship. There often is something much deeper or very deep going on inside for her. And when they can understand that, or when they have some awareness around what is actually happening in a woman's body, it can be really helpful and take the pressure off. It's not necessarily an easy way through. I can't remember who I was talking to, but somebody was talking to me about, well, that's all well and good when you have male-female partners, but think about same-sex partners going through menopause at the same time.
That would be a hurricane. I also feel like it would be both like positives and negatives, because I feel like women are very and I don't want to stereotype here. I'm not trying to stereotype, but we are more intuitive and we are more ability to emotionally connect and understand. So I almost wonder if the positives would be you both have a clearer understanding because you're both going through it, but then also that would also be the thing that completely
we're both on the floor in puddles of hot flashes and all the rest of it.
Yeah. But no, I love what you said there. I think, to have that to send your partner a podcast like this one, or education, because, first and foremost, I feel either you have a partner that's supportive or you don't, partners should absolutely be supportive, and you should absolutely feel you guys are meeting each other in the middle, even if meeting each other where you're at, even if that's messy, even if that's imperfect. I love what you've said with that. So I guess what patterns have you noticed, coming back to a woman going through it right now, maybe she's at the early stages of her journey, what patterns have you noticed where women in midlife, they kind of get stuck. They kind of get to that sticky point. What are the common patterns that you've seen in that phase that have kept women stuck? And what would you want to say to a woman who's maybe in that sticky pattern, whatever that is that you've seen?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because we can get stuck really easily in midlife. And because so much of our energy is going into other areas of our life, for many women in perimenopause, it's not a necessarily a me time of life, maybe like it was in our early 20s. There's a lot of energy going outwards. And so to be able to focus on ourselves and help ourselves get unstuck is quite a challenge. I often... And what goes along with taking time out for ourselves is guilt, is feelings of guilt, that I'm doing nothing, or I'm just taking care of myself. We often think, well, it's just sort of conditioned into us that we need to be 100 miles an hour all the time, doing, caretaking, all the rest of it, whatever our sort of life setup is.
Or that looking at or focusing on yourself is selfish. That's something I see a lot with women is, I'm being selfish if I focus on myself. Yeah. Exactly.
And I think, as much as nobody wants to go through, we don't want to go through illness and difficulty like that. But when I went through that in my 20s, through that Crohn's disease journey, I really learned that if I'm not focused on myself, if I'm not supporting and healing and helping myself, I can't do anything else. There's no foundation. And for me, the same goes in perimenopause, menopause, right? Your body will only put up with it for so long. You giving out over and over and over again without refilling yourself up. And yet it can be, so we can understand that, and yet it can be very, very difficult to make the changes. And so the way I work with women around it is to talk about, we don't have to reinvent our whole life. We don't have to throw it all out and start again. But let's include something else that is nourishing, that you really enjoy, that is supportive for you. Let's bring that in. Or let's drop something, because this is where we face into our people-pleasing behaviours, lack of boundaries, all of that stuff. Let's drop something that is no longer serving us. Let's make one small change at a time. Having support of other women, connection and community is so nourishing. The feeling of being alone with this is harmful to women, actually. And then the other piece I want to add to this is that if, like so many of us, me included, you have experience of trauma, with a capital T, the big stuff, but also accumulated smaller traumas from early life. Perimenopause is a time when this will arise again in your psyche. And not for everyone, but for many of us, it is a common lived experience. And you might think, well, I've done the work around that. I did the counselling around that. I should be fine. But remember, your brain is rewiring. So life is like, a spiral. We come round again. Oh, I recognise that pattern again. Oh, here's this pattern of I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. So that's where the invitation, really, your psyche is inviting you in to, okay, so how can we do some work around this? How can I support this? So that self-compassion and, self-awareness and self-compassion are so key. I don't think we're taught that enough.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I don't think women are taught that enough. And I feel, to your point, because I know we haven't touched on nervous system yet. I really want to geek out on that with you. but something that I've seen a lot, even with my clients, is and I'm curious to know your thoughts on this, but women who come from that people pleasing, and you're right, it is ingrained into us. And I've seen it with really high achieving women, women who run businesses, who are the mum, who've got they're taking care of 3-4 kids, whatever it is, like they're doing all the things. And externally it looks like they're ticking all the boxes, but internally they're chaos, really struggling. And, I often see women who, to your point, what you just said before around sometimes it's not about adding more stuff in, it's actually deducting and taking stuff out. But that's really confronting for someone who is a people pleaser, because saying no, and as you say before, having boundaries, setting boundaries and putting those things in place can feel like the most terrifying thing in the world. And women would actually rather burn themselves out by adding 5-10 things to their plate than face the one thing that they actually need to subtract in order to support themselves and move further ahead. And so I'm curious, is that something that you've seen in your work? And if it is, what's something that you have found has been supportive for a woman who has come from that real people-pleasing state, where you can see clearly, look, this is the thing that you need to subtract here, or this is the thing we actually need to face that I know is maybe scary or uncomfortable to face. How do you, I guess, navigate that with a client?
Yeah, what a great question. So the first challenge we have with that is that most of the time we don't know it's happening, right? It's so conditioned into us that we can't separate the people-pleasing behavior from ourself. So we don't actually know that there's a choice to be made, which is very often why we get stuck in not being able to drop that thing that's no longer serving us, that someone else can take on or whatever. Yeah. So that really understanding the gender conditioning around people pleasing, I think of it as the how our brains, female brains are wired to sort of tend and befriend kind of thing, right?
And but nurture and be for others, and yeah.
However, we've got all those hundreds of years of patriarchal conditioning that has warped that into people-pleasing behaviour, where we empty ourselves out and there's nothing left of us at the age of 50 kind of thing. Right?
We make self-abandonment normal. So self-trust feels like...
Hell yeah.
Self-trust feels like the most terrifying thing, because you're like, no, self-abandonment, even though it's detrimental to me, is like the most real thing that I know.
Yeah, because actually we don't know what a felt sense experience of self-trust is. Like, what does that feel like when that is online and active in my body? Most of us don't know, or we have fleeting examples of what that might feel like. But so education around understanding, around why people-pleasing comes about. This is not about blaming men. We're all subject to our conditioning, right? Yeah, of course. This is about understanding why, the kind of structures of people-pleasing. So understanding first, and then what I've found with women who are, they might know that they're doing it, so we might have parents that obviously they're, 20, 30 years older than us, maybe they're starting to age. We're maybe struggling with our parents, as an example, and their behaviour. And yet it's so ingrained in us to do everything for them, to never hold up to the light behaviours that are harmful, that kind of thing. And so I've had clients that are aware of that. They're also aware that there's some people-pleasing behaviours that are there, boundaries. They haven't really learned about boundaries yet. They're aware of all that, and yet they cannot make the change from week to week, right? And so that's where we do deeper work around self-value, self-concept and self-worth, self-love, all of that stuff. But what I've found to be incredibly powerful for women is when we have a small group of women around us who can see us, who witness that this is going on, and who support us in making those micro changes or those big changes in our lives. Because when we drop some of the people pleasing and we change our behaviors, or we express a boundary, what very often happens is there's a rebound like a rebound of emotion, of guilt and vulnerability, and I'm a bad person and I shouldn't do that, and now they'll hate me, or whatever it is.
Yeah, of course.
And so just to have that be heard by one or more people. This is why I do love group work, because when you get that right synergy of women, we are so empowering for each other. Without the defenses.
So true. So true. It can honestly be like such a secret power to have, a group of women there that, and the transformation that you see, like on an internal and physical level, like is just, mind blowing. It's so cool. It's so cool to see. And to your point there, like, I think like the guilt thing is real. Like, and what I try and share with clients is like, you feeling guilt after setting a boundary isn't a sign that it was wrong of you to set that boundary, right? Because, like it's a very normal thing. I used to be, speaking a little bit from my experience, I used to be a massive people pleaser. I was very much conditioned, like a lot of women are, to, and I didn't even see it at the time. Like it's a hindsight thing, right? You see it in hindsight and you go, wow, like I really did a great job of abandoning myself and not, and it's kind of a hindsight thing. But when you see it, you can't unsee it. And then, from that, it's like the guilt's real though. The guilt, I think, hands down, I don't think I've ever worked with a client or heard of a story where someone set a boundary and didn't feel guilt afterwards, especially in the initial stages when you're learning that process and you're learning to kind of come out of that people pleasing. It's just a normal part of the process. And I think if we can normalize that, so, women listening to this go, okay, I'm trying to set boundaries here and it feels messy and I'm feeling really guilty and I'm it's like, it's really uncomfortable. And right now, like, it's like, this is your note to push, to just push through that and know that that's normal and you're going to feel guilty. It's a normal part of the process, but that's not a sign to stop or to go back on your boundary or to fall back into those self-abandonment patterns, I guess, if you will.
That's exactly right. Yeah, because they often will perceive guilt as a sign that we've done something wrong. I mean, that's guilt's inherent job, right?
Yes.
But actually what that guilt is telling us is that we've done something different to our conditioning.
Yeah.
So I'm the same as you. I include that in the boundary work of, hey, this is very likely, this rebound is going to come up. Yep. Let's share about it. Let's normalize it. Let's make it okay within ourselves. We don't need to run away from it. It's not a sign that something has gone wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what I found really freeing around like what you're sharing there about the internal world and the internal work around guilt is I think it's helpful for women to understand that our brain is there to keep us alive. Like our brain cares about our survival, not our success. So when you can understand that, you know that even if it feels scary or uncomfortable, that's kind of like your brain being like, oh, this is new. Like, no, let's go back to familiarity and what we know. Even if what we know is self-abandonment and not serving us and not good for us and detrimental to our health and our well-being, your brain will pull you back there because that's safety in the brain's, mind, as opposed to carving out this new path, which is healthy, which is, supportive for you and is, how do you navigate that, I guess, with clients, helping them to understand that when they're in that moment of like, this feels really uncomfortable and scary for me. I know this is something I need to do, whether it's setting a boundary, whether it's shifting something. How do you, I guess, navigate that with a client or what are the things that you kind of help them tell them or help them to see them through that?
That perspective of, actually this is what our brain is hardwired to do. And human culture has developed, but actually the physical brain and the way the brain is wired hasn't kept up with modern life. So I love what you said about the safety versus success thing, right? So that's really important. I certainly lean into that in supporting women. And what I find we haven't been really taught to do is to, and it's certainly what I went through so when you go through psychosynthesis counselling training and like psychotherapy training, you have to do your own deep inner work, right? So it's years of therapy, like really deep work. And through that process, you learn to change your relationship with your emotional self. And that does take time, but it's so worth the journey. So when we learn from an embodied place, like deep in our body, that we can feel these uncomfortable feelings and we can allow them to be there. And we can recognize that I am having this feeling, but I'm more than this feeling, right? So that, I mean, those are just words when I say them, but when you really feel it and your awareness drops into it, it creates space for us to be able to feel the hard stuff, but understand that this is, you know, asserting a boundary that I haven't asserted before, confronting something that I haven't confronted before, is worth my while because it's important for my moral compass, for my values, that kind of thing. That's that's the work that I support women to do. And look, we are not, I mean, who teaches us to understand and be with our feelings? It just is organically templated to us as children and the world around us. Well, if our parents were very shut off to their own feelings, like mine were, like many of our parents were, then we don't have a template. I remember in therapy when I was first doing my training and I was ranting and raving and obviously really angry about something, and my therapist said to me, I can't remember her words. It was kind of like, what are you noticing in your body as you say that? Or what does that feel like in your body? I had no idea. I had no consciousness of what the feeling state was that was connected to what I was saying. And so because I was very cut off from my feelings, and it's a common experience, right? So it took a long time for me to knit those back together. And I don't know if this sounds like too intense for people or too heavy, but it is the work. This is the work that actually frees us up to live the life that we want to live. And so you, the people, you know, for you that's listening to this, you are so worthwhile and worthy of that for your life, because that next chapter is just beginning.
Absolutely. I love that. And what you've said is so powerful there around like feeling the emotion, but being completely disconnected from it. I think that's a really powerful thing to share, because when I've in my own experience previously, and I've seen it with clients as well, they can in detail explain who upset them or what happened or what the circumstance was. But when it comes to connecting with their body and where they feel it, or which I know probably to anyone listening who's never done therapy or never even, you know, maybe just starting this journey, can sound very woo-woo, right? It can sound very airy-fairy when it is actually backed by science. It is actually backed by, even though we can't see our emotions, they're a very real part of us. Every human being has an emotional experience, and those emotions are real. And I feel like we've gone from one extreme to the other, where it's like, you know, there can be too much focus on the feeling on one side, and on the other side it's complete emotional avoidance and unavailability, and it's like neither of those are good for us, you know.
Neither of those are helpful. And I teach that because I used to teach mindfulness, you know, how to meditate, practice mindfulness really regularly, and that was something I would put up on the whiteboard, right? Our relationship with our emotions. At the one end, we're totally disconnected, shut down to them. We're all in our head. Emotions have no value. And at the other end of the spectrum, we are a complete puddle of our emotions, led around by them, victim to them. Neither of those help us, right? So it's finding that middle ground and being in relationship with our feelings and our emotions, because, you know, if we're cutting off our emotions, we're also cutting off joy and fun and laughter and all the good feeling things, right? So being
that deep fulfillment and peace.
So it's about, and this is all very easy to talk about, right? But then you layer in perimenopause and you don't have so much of that. So estrogen is a very and progesterone, I think, are very soothing, right? They can calm and soothe and settle. We don't have that in the same way because we've got all that fluctuation in the lowering.
Of course.
So we're more sort of at odds with our feeling state, or we're more subject to the feelings as they arise. They feel like they overtake us more. We're more easily overwhelmed by them. So I do want to include that in the conversation.
Absolutely.
And I think this is where it moves into that nervous system work that that you talked about briefly before, where it becomes really important.
Would you like to share a little bit on that? Like for a woman listening right now who's maybe, you know, I certainly know a lot of the messaging out there is around like lowering your cortisol and things like that. But if I could go on a tangent there. I'm not going to do that. I could go on a rant there, but I won't. But would you mind sharing for a woman listening to this right now who maybe hasn't even heard of the term nervous system regulation before, or maybe if she has, she just sees it as fight or flight and that's it. Like, you know, that kind of very basic understanding of it. Would you mind like sharing how that actually ties into mental health and that internal state that you were talking about before? Would you mind just sharing a little bit about that, just giving an explanation for someone who's like brand new, doesn't understand what nervous system regulation is or how that would support them, I guess, in midlife and what they're going through?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because nervous system regulation is just everywhere right now, and we can look at it, and even I look at it and go, yeah, but what does that actually mean in my day-to-day life?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so right now, if I pay attention to my body, and this is how I link them in, right? I notice that my heightened experience of when we began, which was a little bit of nervousness, a lot of excitement, where my nervous system was up just a little bit. As we've connected and talked and laughed and shared, my nervous system has come into more of a regulated state. I'm not saying it was dysregulated before, because our nervous system has this very, you know, interesting bandwidth. It can be all sorts of different states.
Sure.
There's so much to say about it, and I don't know how much we need to know in terms of what helps us. What I do know is that early life experience of trauma affects how your nervous system functions and how regulated or easily dysregulated it becomes. And so somebody that has experienced trauma will more often find themselves with a dysregulated nervous system. And that's what I see with my clients. And, you know, there's research around that. And what we find in perimenopause and early postmenopause is that because of the hormonal shifts, we're more subject to nervous system dysregulation. And depending on where sort of your nervous system bandwidth was, right? So it will have a bit more stress put on it, which is why, you know, we're quicker to fly off the handle, we're quicker to overwhelm. It feels like, hang on a minute, I used to be able to handle the stress of whatever was going on with my teenage child there, and now I just seem to be thinking about it all the time. So this is all in that field of our nervous system, which is obviously includes our brain, includes our body, includes the subtle cues and responses in our body. And we know, I will know that my nervous system is dysregulated if I'm having a very intense experience of anxiety or a panic attack, right? So that's at one end of the extreme. And there's a lot that we can say about the freeze response, about fight and flight, about the fawn response, all of that kind of thing. But what I would sum up for us as women going through menopause is just know that our capacity, which may have been wider and broader prior to perimenopause, in terms of our nervous system regulation, which is how our brain is functioning, what's happening with our breathing, what's happening with our heart rate, how good or not good we feel in our body, that bandwidth shrinks. It does tend to shrink going through perimenopause. And so what I suggest to women is that, well, what can I do to nourish that for myself, to support that? Okay. And also remembering, yes, perimenopause can last up to 10 years, a long time,
a decade, yeah.
Not pleasant for many of us. However, on the other side of that, as the later postmenopausal woman, you are no longer run by your hormones to nurture, to tend, to befriend. So you've got much more opportunity to really be your own person and be incredibly intentional. And that is why, you have that the wise woman and the crone in later life, where she's incredibly direct, knows her own self, doesn't take any shit. This is the empowered postmenopausal woman, right?
I love it. Yeah. I love it. So good. Because you come back to yourself, as you talk about coming home to yourself a lot. And I think what you've just said there is so powerful. It's like sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but coming back to yourself.
I was just laughing because we went from nervous system to the crone.
Yeah, feel free to share on that if you'd like to.
Well, I think it is really interesting where Jane Fonda does this really cool talk about aging, and it is a really interesting talk. I can actually send you a link you could maybe chuck in the notes.
Yeah,
it's really powerful. And she talks about the bell curve, right, where after 40 we're on that rapid decline into old age. And her perspective is, which is incredibly helpful, what if we see life not as a bell curve with decline after 40, but as a staircase of increasing empowerment.
I love that.
If we're willing to listen to the call of this phase of life. Yeah. And I know a lot of women that have gone through my courses and that I've worked with have found that really empowering. You have to sit with it for a while because it goes so much against not only our conditioning, but everything we see thrown at us out there in the world, right? All the anti-aging, all of that.
Well, that's the thing. From the beginning of time, women have been taught that their value's in how they look in their age, right? So it's like it's that conditioning, and so women, like, on top of already struggling, like battling yourself, because you're going through that very real transition, that very real phase of, perimenopause, your hormones are changing, there's everything going on, and internally as well, with like your mental health, emotional well-being, physical changes. On top of that, having to deal with the external conditioning as well is like another layer, right? And it's hard. It's hard. Like, let's not sugarcoat it. Like, it's hard.
It is hard, and our value has been perceived to decline beyond the age of, mid-30s kind of thing, right? And so if we want to live a life that we feel inspired or excited about, that we do have to really question those viewpoints and that conditioning, and kind of decide if I'm going to accept that or I'm going to throw it out as being not worthwhile. Because our life, I really do think at this time of life we are on a bit of a precipice. We are on a precipice, and our life can either shrink and get smaller, or it can expand. And actually, perimenopause is the beginning of the start of a whole new chapter. And that can sound really cliched to say that, but I have seen it for so many women, and one of the biggest things is to not to have to walk it by yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. To have someone like you or like me or a good friend who's gone through menopause to just have that conversation with you if you're going through a really tough time, and really be there for you, but also hold the fire of, and on the other side of this, you are an incredibly worthwhile human being. Well, you are right now, but there's also exciting, fulfilling things that are going to show up in your life that you are going to engage with.
I love that.
And for many of us at this time, it's like, well, I'm coming up to 55. I could look at myself and go, well, is my career done? Is it reached its peak? Is it over? Am I sliding into like retirement? I could perceive it like that. Or I could look at it like, how many mature, wise therapists are needed in the world, and can I create a life that really serves me going forward?
That's beautiful.
Anyway.
No, that's so true. That's so true. And what you said there about expanding is really key, because I think a lot of women, whether it's perimenopause or even just a difficult season, can see their life shrinking and just think that's it.
Yeah.
And it's like looking at, like doing the inner work, doing like, like what you've shared there, where it's like connecting with your emotions, going through that process, even if it's brand new, to go through that, to face those parts of you that you've either abandoned or kind of put to the side. That's there not to be this scary thing that's supposed to be another layer on a layer on a layer. It's actually to create that expansion, right? It's actually to, like, that is kind of the through way to do that, is to face those inner parts of yourself, to expand, to have more joy in life, to have more fulfillment, to as you say, get out the other side and know who you are, even on a deeper level. It's not that you didn't know who you were before, but you know what I mean, like to go
totally.
through that shift.
And it can feel like, we're talking about this with such interest, but maybe if you're listening, you might think, well, that just all seems too much and too hard and too big, and it'll never happen for me. It all starts with one step, whether you're working with me or Justine, or you're talking to a friend that can really be present and there with you, because, I don't know, you're so worth it.
Yeah, women need to be told that they are worthy and capable.
We really do. We really do.
We don't hear it enough. So if you're listening, you're worthy, you are capable, you're an amazing woman. Put that on your dashpad, put it on your phone. Remind yourself.
And we mean it, right?
Yeah,
Truly.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just curious, Meegan, there is one question I have from a practical perspective that I haven't had a chance to ask you yet, because you spoke about sitting with the feeling and connecting your own journey with connecting with your own emotions, and the difference between that and just going through the experience, like the external experience of the situation or the person or the anger or whatever it is that you were feeling in the moment. Where can a woman start if she's listening to this right now? Maybe she's done a bit of talk therapy before, maybe she hasn't. What's like maybe one practical habit or something that she could start with that's really simple, that she could start with today, that could help her to just get her that 1% more connected to herself, or more accepting of herself for where she's at right now?
Yep, cool. Let's do it together, shall we?
Sure.
All right. So, if you're willing, just place your hand on your chest or your belly, and take a breath in. And just notice sensation that's available to you in your body. Just notice what you notice about your body or your inner experience. And can you say a few words to that, what you notice?
I'm noticing stillness.
Mm-hmm. And where do you notice that?
In my chest.
Beautiful, beautiful. And then just ask yourself inside your mind, what do I need? And then just tell me what comes up, if anything.
Funnily, rest came up for me.
Yeah. And how does that feel that arose in your awareness?
I don't know if I can put words to it just yet.
Okay. It's okay. Just be with the sensation in the breath. Yeah. Sometimes it takes a bit to sort of metabolize what comes up. Yeah. I
guess I'm getting the color blue, which I know sounds weird because it's not like
Beautiful.
Blue's what's coming up for me right now.
All is welcome. It's a great example of, sometimes random things arise in our consciousness. So you can just allow, if you're willing, just allow that blue to be there and just notice it. We don't have to figure it out. I don't have to interpret it, and nor do you. We can just let it be there. So that is where we could start. Because how many times a week would we normally do that outside of a therapy room or a coaching session or something like that?
Yeah.
And yet it can be so helpful checking in with ourselves and like really feeling it in the body and just asking ourselves, because who asks us that, right?
No, yeah.
What
not
do
many
you
people.
need in this moment? Yeah. And it might be something that you're like, well, I can't get that from anybody. That's not going to come to me. All we need to do in that moment is just be with it and go, yeah, just really acknowledging that in this time, this moment, I need support. Yeah, and just being with it. It is really helpful, and connecting it back to the nervous system. I don't know if you noticed a bit of a shift in your nervous system as you went through that process.
Yeah, I feel more calm for sure. For sure. That's beautiful. That's such a powerful practice. And as you say, it's so simple, but it's something we don't do enough or at all. And
I don't do it enough, for sure.
Well, it's like that saying, right? We're very good. I think human beings in general are very good at sharing things that are very supportive for others, but like sometimes we need to take our own advice, right? We need to, check in with ourselves and
be our best friend, right?
Yeah, be our best friend and our biggest supporter and cheerleader, for sure, for sure. So I guess the last question I have, Meegan, for you is there anything that you want to share that you haven't had a chance to say yet to any midlife woman listening to this right now? Is there something that you wish she would know that you haven't yet shared or that you want to speak to?
So 2 things. And the first thing is don't suffer this alone. If you've listened all the way to this, we're about an hour in, and you're feeling like, well, that's all well and good, Meegan and Justine, but I wouldn't have an idea of where to start, then reach out. It doesn't have to be for, years and years of work. It can be just something that supports you over the next period, right? Because you are so worth it. And then the next thing, which I have spoken to, but I really want to reiterate, if you are in the thick of perimenopausal symptoms, of all of that, everything that we've brought up, and I know we've missed some because there's so many, psychological and physical, get that support that you need. Don't be like me and suffer through like 9 years of really like losing yourself. I had to change my whole business to deal with what was happening, the way I work with clients, all that kind of stuff. I just couldn't manage it. Get that help that you need, whether that's natural support, whether that's hormonal support, whether that's a blend, whatever it is for you, get that support on board. Because why did I continue to suffer for that long when that support was there? And there's lots of reasons for me, the word wasn't out about it and all of that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's what I'm saying now. And then thirdly, what I want to say is that on the other side of this, so your brain is rewiring. On the other side of this, you have an opportunity for a real upgrade in the way your mind works, in your psychology, in your psyche, in who you are in this world. And so that is exciting, and it might not feel like it when we're right in the middle of it. And because I know I couldn't see any of this right when that was happening for me, but I can tell you way on the other side of it now that it is a really, really good place to be, and life is exciting and interesting, and not without challenge, not at all, but it's there, and you come home to a whole new sense of self that can feel and is so empowered. That is the chapter that you're moving into now. So I really wanted to end with that.
I love that. And that's so powerful, Meegan. And that's why we need women like you who have walked that path, so that you can help women that are going through it and that are starting that journey to say, hey, there is a light at the end of the tunnel here. It is better than you can imagine. And I'm going to help you walk through it, because we need women like you who are a beautiful example of like, I've gone through the hell and I've come out the other side.
I'm better than ever.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm being what I needed when I went through menopause.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Well, Meegan, it's been such an absolute pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much, so much for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us today. Just before we go, where can people find you? I'm going to put it in the show notes, but where would you like to send people from today's podcast?
Sure. You can follow me on Instagram. That's probably the only socials I'm hanging out on these days. So that's at Meegan Cares. Two E's in Meegan. Yeah. And then you can also find me on my website. So it's meegancare.co.nz. But you'll put that in the show notes so people can find that way. And
I will put it in the show notes.
I'm really open to messages, to emails, just sharing experience, referring to the best next step. Feel free to reach out.
Amazing. If you're listening, feel free to reach out. We'll put the notes in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And Meegan, thank you so much for being here with us.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you, Justine.